Fingers crossed.
In this episode of Travelogue, join me in Sichuan province as I visit its queen of mountains. I'll show you all the beauty and majesty of the valleys that lie at its foot before endeavouring to reach the summit itself. Wish me luck.
There's nothing otherwise.
Welcome to southwest China. I'm currently travelling through a 25-kilometre landslide zone that a few years ago was the epicentre of the strongest earthquake China had seen in over 60 years. But there's light at the end of my particular tunnel. I'm making my way to Rilong town and the beautiful Sigunao mountain range.
I mean, visibility is pretty much zero. We've been like this for, the last 30 minutes already. We just keep getting worse and worse. The road before was covered in just rubble from recent landslides. We saw car wrecks everywhere. But hopefully we'll be there soon. Maybe 30 minutes more and we'll be over the mountain. And then we'll be able to finally head down towards the town of Rilong. But fingers crossed that we're going to be able to get there on time and safely.
After 7 hours, we finally arrive, safe and sore.
Hey, welcome to Rilong town. Actually, it was pretty difficult for us to get here, and this place is also 3,000 meters above sea level, so I've got a bit of a headache as I'm speaking right now because of the high altitude climate. But I'm here because I want to visit the Sigunao Mountains, so called the Queen of Mountains in Sichuan province, and also the surrounding areas. And hopefully by the end of the show, I'll be able to climb to the summit of the mountains itself.
Rilong town is 220 kilometers west of the Sichuan provincial capital, Chengdu. Everything you'll need is here, from food to accommodation, even hiking equipment. However, because of the town's dizzying altitude, you'll want to take it slow around here. Rilong is also the gateway to the Sigunao Mountains and the 3 surrounding valleys, which together comprise a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I'm on my way to Shuangqiao, supposedly the most beautiful of the 3 valleys.
Right, so your car can only take you here to the entrance of Shuangqiao Valley. And from here, you've got to take the shuttle car inside. So, time to get in the queue.
My guide for this trip is Miss Law. She suggested we come to Shuangqiao Valley first, as all of its scenic spots can be reached by car. A good idea for newcomers still adjusting to the breathlessness at these altitudes.
你看，这儿就是称为盆景滩。那它这个为什么叫盆景滩呢？你看它整个图呢，有山有水，非常像那个天然的一个盆景图。
哦，漂亮。
Miss Law tells me this gorgeous place is called Bonsai Lake. Over many years, these trees have become submerged in meltwater flowing down from the mountains. To me, it all looks pretty surreal, a bit like the tropical mangrove trees of Southeast Asia, but covered in snow. If you're planning to visit, I'd recommend coming here either in September, when the valley is on fire with the colours of autumn, or late October, if you're more of a winter person like me. Just remember to pack warm clothing and good hiking shoes, as the snow can get quite treacherous. Besides Bonsai Lake, there are 5 other major attractions within Shuangqiao Valley. My guide tells me there are stories about each of them. She says that Sigunao Mountains means Mountains of the 4 Sisters, 4 goddesses who protected the local people from a monster. Apparently, this lake, Sigulato, is where they bathed. Mostly, I'm impressed that a valley that doesn't require any trekking is this beautiful. Just goes to show that nature doesn't have to be inaccessible to be unspoiled.
So she was telling me earlier that we're going to have lunch here, and honestly, if you're going to eat in this kind of environment, just your appetite's going to be massive.
Lunch here is pretty simple. There are plenty of these wooden farmhouses dotted around the valley. Most of them are run by local Tibetans, offering traditional fare, cooked the old-fashioned way, over firewood. I'm told the house specialty here is a kind of pita bread called momo. I can't wait.
有点呛啊！来这边，好，哇，看着漂亮，
原生态的，这就是咱们双桥镇里边10个菜，就是全是野生的。啊，尝一尝，这就单纯上新鲜。对，
哇，还冒着烟呢。这个应该是蘸什么东西吃啊？
可以把那个酥油加在里边，这个里边加上，好的，翻开，这样。
抛开，然后放里边，一下就化掉。
这个
香啊！
对，
香是吧？哦，You guys are so alert to this. Forget your croissants, forget your crepes or anything. This is where it's at. Get some of this grilled momo, put some yak butter in it, and just beautiful. 应该来点咖啡。
对，这个就是说。 哦，这个就是咱们的咖啡。
好好 ，Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. 好，
正式的酥油茶，来。
After that amazing lunch, it's time for me to stretch my legs and explore the remaining 2 valleys. Changping Valley is a good place to start. It's a pretty easy trek with 3 kilometers of boardwalk to help you on your way. However, the valley is 30 kilometers long, so if you plan to see all of it, make sure to bring enough supplies and camping gear. The final valley, Haize, leads to the peak of the Sugunao Mountains, where I'll be heading tomorrow. But first things first, I'm going to need a good night's rest if I'm to do any climbing tomorrow. Luckily, there's an entire street of guest houses here to take your pick from.
So this is where I'm staying. Actually, this entire street is pretty convenient. It's full of guest houses, and you can find horse wranglers and professional trekking guides who can take you up into the valleys. But as for me, I'm staying here because I found it online, and there's some English, you know.
This is Tianqing's guest house. Like many of the others here, it's Tibetan themed and comes with all the mod cons like a hot shower and free Wi-Fi. The owner is also a seasoned traveller herself. I must say, this place is more flashpacker than I'm used to. Check out the imported booze. Nice room with a view. What else could you ask for? Coming up next, it's time to saddle up and make the trek up to base camp as we begin our grueling climb to the top. Along the way, we'll find out what these mountains really mean to the locals. In this episode of Travelogue, join me in Sichuan province as I visit its queen of mountains. I'll show you all the beauty and majesty of the valleys that lie at its foot before endeavouring to reach the summit itself. Wish me luck.
There's nothing otherwise. So the valleys here are beautiful, but I'm mainly here because I want to climb the peaks of Sugunao Mountains. If you want to do any climbing, you have to come to this place to register your details, your next of kin, your contact details, in the very unlikely event that something happens to you. But also mainly so you can get guides and climbing gear. Here we are, the big day. We're registering to climb up to the first peak of the Sugunao Mountains, and the crew is currently filling in the paperwork. If you're an international visitor, then you need to get a letter of endorsement from the Chinese Mountaineering Association in Beijing, and then once you have this, you just come over here and put down all your details.您就是我们今天的向导是吧？对。您怎么贵姓？卢老六。卢老六，卢老师。那我们这一组所有的人都靠你。
Even though we're only climbing the easiest peak, we still need to bring hiking equipment and enough food for several days.
Here is where it really begins, hey? 6 hours on the horse.
I know it might seem like a cop-out to ride a horse all the way up to base camp, but you need to save all the energy you can for the attempt on the summit. Besides, you need to walk alongside your horse sometimes so he doesn't get too tired. Plus, the ride can get quite bumpy at times.
That was incredible.
While horses and wranglers rest, I take a wander around. This isn't just a pretty plateau, it's also a place of worship.
You know, if there was no fog or if there were no clouds at the top, this would be the best place to view all of the peaks of the Sugunao Mountains. In fact, this place is called the Mountain Worshipping Plains, and every year on lunar calendar about May time, which would be roughly June for us, people come here and they go to the mani part over there, the big pile of stones, and they worship the mountains using ceremonial scarfs. They bring offerings of incense and alcohol, and I think that actually is where the rest of us are.
The Sugunao Mountains are considered guardian deities by the local Tibetans. For many, their one wish in life is to perform a kora, a pilgrimage around these mountains to earn a blessing from the guardian deities. But for some, walking these mountains is their life.
$200那一年200天都上山是吧？对。您个人上大风上多少回？
几千吧。
几千回？
对。
几千回。
12年了，你算一下。
啊，真的是。您为什么没有想去，比如说去城里去干活，或开自己的什么店呢？为什么还接着那个带人家上山？
有一点快乐。啊。人生是很多人。啊。很多人，各式各样的人。
It's at this point when I and the rest of my crew realise that we've all lost our phone signals, and no one brought a walkie-talkie. Thank God our guides know the mountains like the back of their hands. As we make our way up, the path gets tougher and muddier. Despite sitting on a horse on autopilot, it's still pretty tiring, especially on your rear end. I couldn't have been happier when I was told it's lunchtime.
So we're halfway up to the base camp and going to let the horses rest for a little bit, let them have some lunch. We also are a bit hungry, but you can't really expect luxury food up here, you know. They actually have to bring a generator up to produce any electricity, and they also have to burn coal as well. So we're just going to have lunch with instant noodles, which honestly that's all I really want to eat right now.
Although there's not much on offer here, we're grateful for what they do have. After all, everything had to be carried up by the wranglers. Anyway, we're on a tight schedule, so this is just a short break for us before we hit the road again. As we get closer to base camp, the air becomes colder, thinner, windier. I'm finding it harder to breathe, and my heart rate is through the roof. But I know I'm almost there when I see snow.
So here we are, base camp at last. 4,500 meters above sea level. So cold, my lips are frozen. Surrounded by, look at this, we're in the navel of snow-capped mountains, eagles flying above us. Tonight, we're going to spend the night here. Tomorrow, that's off. Come on, buddy. Time to let you have a rest. So much better to come here by yourself instead of with these crew members. But if you don't have snow fights up here, I mean, what is there to do? What is there to do? What is there to do?
Yeah, this was a stupid idea. Almost immediately I got a splitting headache from all that physical exertion. Luckily, we didn't have to put up any tents afterwards, thanks to these new stone lodges that are available to all climbers.
Oh, smells amazing. Wow, look at this. You know, I said instant noodles was incredible, but this just beats everything. This food was actually carried up by our horse wranglers, so really have to go and thank them later. But everything you eat, you have to carry up yourself, so make sure you pack well before you come to number one base. Anyway, the best way to thank the guys I think, is to eat before the food goes cold. Here we go. Oh, that's so good. Here we go. It's really, really cold. We're going to have to get up at 3 in the morning tomorrow to go climbing. So with the rest of the crew have all got into our double down sleeping bags. It's only like 6 o'clock in the evening, but going to really need to rest early. And what our guide said was the number one most important thing is do not catch a cold, so I'm going to squeeze as far in as possible into this thing and make a little cocoon for myself. Okay, I'm good. Just about long enough. See you tomorrow. Still not really long enough, is it? I feel like a silkworm.
Coming up next, we're up early to make the big climb, but the odds are against us as we suffer from bad weather, lack of equipment, and altitude sickness. The question is, will we make it?
Good to go. It's about 3:30 in the morning. Barely even slept last night. Seriously, had a splitting headache. Couldn't breathe at times, all because of the high altitude. Our guide said that if your headache gets worse, then you really ought not to go up to the summit. Thankfully, mine's better today. So right now we need to get our stuff, be really quick about it, go have breakfast, and then make it to the summit before 9. Otherwise, we need to get back down, and it would be considered a failure. So, come on. Better eat quick. 您觉得今天我们运气怎么样？
不好，
不好。
一晚上都在下雪，还有那个头灯都不知道怎么上啊。
哦。
再走出去50米，你们就看不到了。
哦。那您的意思是我们上不了？
头灯都没有怎么上？
哇。OK。
每个人有一个灯，每一步都很滑，你摸黑怎么走？
Okay. It's not the best of news to hear. I think we're going to have to eat breakfast and then decide what to do about this afterwards. Although we have a lack of equipment, our guys decided in the end that we can still make our ascent. We'll just have to have one guy with the headlight in between other guys with no headlights. Really breathing extremely hard, and it's still snowing, so we have to move as fast as possible, otherwise let's not think otherwise.
Our guides tell us we must reach the summit by 9 AM, because at noon the sun will melt all the snow at the top, making the return journey treacherous and possibly fatal. It's a tough trek for all of us, and after 40 minutes we get our first piece of bad news.
Very unfortunate turn of events.
能说咱们已经走了2个小时了吗？
Our cameraman here is not feeling up to par. We're just deciding whether or not he should continue, and we think that he should head back to base camp, because if he goes all the way up and he runs out of energy, then he won't be able to come back down. So yeah, he's going to go back to base camp. And
as much as he wants to go up with us, letting him continue to climb would be seriously dangerous. After leaving us as water, it's time for him to head back to base camp. We're all pretty casual about this, but truth is, we're worried. We all more or less feel the same way he does. The thumping heart, the throbbing headache, having to gasp for air every 5 steps we take. Worst of all, we don't even have the right equipment. We're so badly prepared.
Well, it's a bit of a shame, but we can't send our cameraman home. He has to make the way back himself. We want to give him a light, but the ascent's going to be much more difficult, so he's going to have to rely on his iPhone to make his way back. 那你回去休息吧。
不，电那个手机电一拍头就疼。在那。快，沿着这个路啊。
We reassign our equipment and rations and trudge on. We must move quickly, as our time and luck are running low. It started snowing, making the route more difficult and dangerous to climb, especially with so few lights.
You know, I've heard that the elderly and the very young have made it up to the summit, the #1 summit of the Suguno Mountains. But I asked my guide, and in this season, in this snow, actually the climb is much more difficult than the climb up to the #3 peak of the Suguno Mountains, and that's a very technical climb. And after an hour of just trekking up in this ankle-deep snow really takes its toll on you. With every breath I draw, it's just kind of, I'm trying to get as much air into my lungs as possible. Really not a piece of cake.
I'm getting very worried. The snow is starting to hammer down, and at some points is knee-deep. But the scariest part of it all is that we're climbing through complete darkness, barely able to see 5 meters in front of us. And even though we're in a group, I feel utterly, utterly alone. It's time to face the unpleasant truth.
兄弟们，那个，咱们这行吗？这接着下雪。
今天这个下雪的天气，估计上去是有点困难。
那您觉得按咱们现在这速度能上去吗？
现在今天估计够呛，现在可能只走了1/5的距离。
那您的意思就是我们得回去了是吗？
这个也看你们的情况，看你们的体力的情况。
行吧，那回去吧。
我觉得可以回去。
可以回去了，因为
为了安全着想。
这里一直下大雪。
行，回去吧。回去吧。
好。
What can I say? Like they said, you know, when it's snowing, you really shouldn't be climbing this. So, I guess we'll have to call it a day for this one. I mean, honestly, it's quite disappointing. But even so, this entire trip has been a hell of a ride. It's just a shame that we can't climb to the peak. I mean, a lot of people have failed trying to climb, so, we won't be the first ones, but I promise that one day I will come back and I will climb to the summit of the Saguna Mountains. Anyway, I'm Turan. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of Travelogue. 下去吧。